Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Thursday, June 6th. Today is day 244 since October 7th. Today is also the 80th anniversary of D-Day, which was the largest invasion ever assembled before or since, where 156,000 Allied troops landed by sea and air on 5 beachheads in Normandy, France. D-Day was the start of the Allied operations, which would ultimately liberate Western Europe, defeat Nazi Germany, and end the Second World War. Apologies for my video yesterday. All of the news was correct, and it was for Wednesday, June 5th, but I said the wrong date and day number, and today's update is for Thursday, June 6th, day 244. An update on the hostage and ceasefire negotiations. It's not much of an update. Talks today, Thursday, in Qatar, or at least involving Qatari, Egyptian, and U.S. mediators between Israeli and Hamas officials continued with no significant breakthrough. 2 Egyptian security forces sources reported essentially Hamas has welcomed Biden's ideas. They are saying that the U.S. draft resolution that was presented at the UN Security Council was dependent on an Israeli ceasefire proposal that Hamas had seen and rejected, according to Hamas senior officials. They said Israeli documents speak of an open-ended negotiation with no deadline, and it also speaks of Israel regaining their hostages and then resuming the war against Gaza. And Hamas has said that is not acceptable. But Hamas has been consistent since the beginning in saying that they're willing to return the hostages if there can be a complete end to the bombing of Gaza, a permanent ceasefire agreement, or at least guarantees that the war will be brought to an end. Senior Hamas official Hamdan told Qatar Al Arabi that the organization has a promise for mediators to continue efforts to confirm those demands. A memo on the negotiations was sent to Palestinian factions in Gaza and states that the current Israeli proposal deviates from what President Biden presented, and that Israel intends to renew fighting after some of the hostages are released. So that's the most significant concern that Hamas has expressed to Haaretz and to other Arab news sources. The US and 16 other countries have called on both Israel and Hamas to make whatever final compromises are necessary to bring the agreement to a close. They say Israel's ready to move forward and begin the process of receiving hostages, but these foreign countries and the United States are saying it's time for this war to be brought to an end. Relatives of Israeli hostages held in Gaza and other activists have continued to protest. They protested this morning outside of the Knesset and outside of Knesset Speaker Ohana's house in Tel Aviv. So protests have continued in Israel as well. On the Lebanon-Israel border, the Israeli Defense Forces said that they struck Hezbollah targets deep within Lebanon and on the southern border. Hezbollah said that they have launched an Iranian Falak missile at an Israeli military base near the border. The IDF has said that they've completed preparations for a more significant attack on Hezbollah. So hostilities have continued to escalate on the northern border of Israel. An Israeli airstrike overnight into this morning happened in Gaza on an UNRWA school in an area called Nuseirat. It killed 40 people, including 14 children and 9 women. At least 73 people were wounded, according to officials in Gaza. That was reported by Reuters. In a briefing to international media, the Israeli Defense Forces said that the strike was directed by intelligence, that it was an accurate strike. They said that they had intel that there were 20 to 30 terrorists hiding at the UNRWA school. They said that they did survey the area prior to the strike. But at least 40 people were killed. The Israeli Defense Forces was aware of the presence of civilians there. The strike had been postponed previously twice over the last 2 days to minimize civilian casualties, according to an IDF spokesperson. They said they targeted rooms in the school where terrorist activities had been detected, and that the army had no information on civilian casualties related to the strike. I just want to make one comment here. It feels like this is on a loop in Gaza. You know, there's this nightmare where there's a cycle of impunity over and over again. The world says, protect civilians, do a better job protecting civilians. Israel says, we're doing everything we can to protect civilians. Dozens of civilians die, and then the whole thing's repeated over again. And the next day, it's replayed, or the next week, there's another repeat. And the Israeli military, again, acts with impunity over and over again. There were a group of militants who entered an Israeli-controlled buffer zone along the Gaza border. They opened fire near Israeli forces. The IDF said that 3 of the militants were killed and 1 retreated back into Rafah. Equipment found in their possession indicated that they were prepared for a raid on a military base or a border community along the Gaza border. Israel will set up a permanent system to allow wounded and sick people in and out of the Gaza Strip, according to Israel's coordinator of government activities in the territories, that's COGAT. And Gaza's health ministry said that 25,000 patients must be transferred outside of Gaza in order to receive treatment that would be life-saving. According to the ministry, since the war started, almost 5,000 patients were transferred outside of Gaza for medical treatment, but none have been transferred since the Rafah attacks began at the beginning of May. According to the health ministry in Gaza, the death tolls at 36,654 people killed and at least 83,309 wounded since October 7th. There have been reports of increased fires on the northern border. Firefighting teams are attempting to gain control of a fire in a forest called the Baram Forest on Israel's north border, and 2 Israeli soldiers were killed in fighting on the Israeli north border. In the West Bank, Israeli forces surrounded a house in Jenin and clashed with individuals, according to Palestinian reports. A security source said that forces are in the city to arrest a wanted individual, and the Palestinian Red Crescent Society reported that 2 people were killed and 3 others were wounded in that exchange. And the Palestinian Health Ministry reported that Mohammed Abu Bakr, 24, was killed by the Israelis, by the IDF, in a village near the city of Jenin. Palestinian Authority also said that due to their financial situation, the Israelis have been withholding taxes, that the Palestinian Authority will only pay half of their employees' monthly salaries on this Sunday, which is ahead of the Eid al-Adha holiday. At The Hague, Spain will join South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza. Spain follows Ireland, which also announced that it will intervene in the case. And the former Israeli Supreme Court President, Aharon Barak, has resigned as a judge at the International Court of Justice. He has cited personal and family reasons for his resignation. I wanted to acknowledge just a couple other quick things. The esteemed German theologian Johann Moltmann, who was a mentor to Miroslav Volf, who wrote a significant book called Exclusion and Embrace. But Moltmann died earlier this week at the age of 93 years old. He was a prisoner of war during World War II. He developed a liberation theology that was predicated on the view that God suffers with humanity while also promising humanity a better future through the hope of resurrection. He was known for his theology of hope. And he also had great empathy for the trauma and tragedy of the Jewish people. And I wonder what his theology of hope would say now for the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine, and the people who are suffering so much today. The Episcopal News Service announced today that their General Convention is coming up in June, and their social justice and international policy committees for the General Convention has recommended a series of resolutions responding to various aspects of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, including whether or not to apply the term apartheid to Israel's disparate treatment of Palestinians, and Jewish Israelis. And so I just wanted to call attention to the 81st General Convention of the Episcopal Church, which will be in Louisville, Kentucky this June. I'd encourage you to take a look at those resolutions. And finally, I want to ask for prayers for Palestinian activist from Hebron, Issa Amro. It was posted on Facebook that last Monday, he was brutally attacked by a group of settlers who attempted, he said, I actually think someone else is reporting that he was almost murdered. He was hit with iron pipes. There's a picture of him in the hospital. He has a severe head injury. The bones on his right shoulder were dislocated. His hand, his left foot have been injured. Palestinian police have not arrested anyone. But he says he's not able to communicate right now, but they hope to have more details soon. So please pray for Issa Amro. Pray for peace, continue in your efforts and working and calling for a comprehensive ceasefire and an end to the bombing of Gaza.